As 54-year-old Steve Utash fights for his life in the hospital, his daughter is still trying to grasp how an angry mob put him there. News of Detroit police arresting a total of 4 people now, about the only comfort around.
I didn't think they were going to catch any at all. Now to hear they have 4 total in custody, that's great.
Utash was viciously beaten last week by 10 to 12 people after stopping to help a boy he accidentally hit on Detroit's east side.
I think it lasts about 1 minute, and then they let him go, and then they jump back on him again, and then they did it about 3 times, and finally, you know, somebody was trying to help the guy that got beat up. It was sad because I knew the guy got out of his car trying to see what damage he did.
My dad was stepping out of the car to do the right thing, and he got punished for it.
I would charge them with everything I could.
If charged and convicted as an adult, he could face life behind bars for assault with intent to murder. A long time for such a young man. Today, his parents left without anything to say, but the boy's relatives offered prayers for Steve Utash as he fights for his life. Anything you would say to the family of Mr. Utash?
Oh, we prayed. We prayed for him. That's all. We prayed that he comes back to his natural state.
And breaking news in this case, we just got video in-house of the arraignment of the 17-year-old charged with assault with intent to commit murder. Take a look at him. His name is Bruce Wimbush Jr. He is the teen who police say was one of a dozen who nearly beat a man to death in the streets of Detroit. His attorney says Wimbush had only a small role in the mob beating, and therefore he pled not guilty. Here is what happened inside that courtroom today. Pay close attention here. The video isn't the best quality, but listen to the attorney speak here.
Judge, as far as him failing to appear, he has absolutely no prior criminal history. There's nothing to suggest that this is something he does or have done in the past, have been warned about, arrested on. There's nothing to believe in which he wouldn't appear because he had every opportunity in the world to leave. He voluntarily surrendered. He could have ran, he could have escaped, he could have refused to go to the police department. He did none of those things. As stated, he's a high school student, never been in trouble before. I had a brief reading of some of the facts. My understanding there's multiple individuals, multiple adults, and my client allegedly has some type of small minor role, Judge.
Joey and the Dream Team is back. Judge Alex, also Darren. So the judge, Joey, is saying my client had no priors. He could have run. He didn't. He's come forward. He's a high school student.
You know what happens, Susan? In us defense attorneys, we use a defense. It's called being merely present. And merely present means were you really just there, or were you participating in the act itself? And not only that, Susan, but were you aiding, were you encouraging, were you abetting, were you facilitating? All of these legalistic words to mean that you were a participant. If he's a participant, he'll be held accountable. Lastly, Susan, remember the arguments being made for the bail were just that, to tell the judge that he's a good risk to return to court. They don't go to the actual facts and the merits of the case itself.
And no prior saying he's a good kid.
Right.
I want to show you the 17-year-old again. When there are that many people involved in a beating, the question may be, how can investigators be sure of this particular boy's role, Darren? It is difficult, and this reminds me of that case with the motorcycle gang, so to speak, around that SUV and the family inside. It's confusing to authorities, I would think, on who's involved, who's not, who was just watching, and who was actually fighting.
Well, it is confusing, but that's the same kind of confusion that exists in many cases, and it's up to investigators and prosecutors to parse that information carefully in order to gain a conviction. Obviously, in any case, you've got to prove an individual's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. It's not just somebody was generally participating in something. You got to show that they were the ones who did it. And I also want to amplify something very quickly that Joey said. When we're talking about this bail hearing, it's unique because when matters of bail are before the court, the judge will usually presume somebody guilty, and the only thing that they're focused on is danger to the community and flight risk. So it's a little unique that it's the one place where the court's going to presume the defendant did it.
All right, I want to bring in the suspect's family. They were asked outside the courthouse about the victim, in this case, Stephen Utash, who remains in a coma and critical condition this hour. Take a listen.
Anything you would say to the family of Mr. Utash?
Oh, we prayed. We prayed for him. That's all. We prayed that he comes back to his natural state.
I done prayed for him when it first started. I heard about it. I prayed about it. Put him in God's hands.
Judge Alex, certainly a remorseful family, it sounds like. The 17-year-old in some serious trouble. What kind of punishment is he looking at if convicted, and also the other people involved in this fight?
Well, they're looking at very serious prison time because this is a very serious offense. And, you know, we see this a lot. The tensions out there tend to be really high when you have a racial division. And right now, remember in the Zimmerman case, there was that question immediately, white male, black victim, oh my God, is this racial? Right now, it's the opposite. And the police should be looking to see, was this racially motivated? If it is racially motivated, it may be charged as a hate crime. But it could very well be it's not racially motivated at all. Just because they're two different races doesn't mean it was driven by race. Right. It could just be driven by the emotion of this child getting hit by a car, which is a horrible incident, and the bystanders unable to control their rage. But that will also affect whether or not they get a longer prison sentence than they already would for this horrible crime.
Yeah, I think you're onto something with that. Them seeing a young boy be hit by a car, the emotions got involved. It was an accident, though, and we saw in the surveillance video. In addition to Bruce Wimbush, we have just learned the names of the other men arrested in this attack. They are 30-year-old Wanzi Saffold and 24-year-old Deontay Davis. Both will be arraigned later today on charges of assault with intent to commit murder. Serious charges, as you heard from the judge. A 16-year-old has also been arrested, but not yet formally charged. Now, the driver's family wants more than just arrest here. As you would imagine, they're pushing for hate crime charges against the men who did the beating.
The little boy was laying there, and he said his head was hurt, and I kept trying to say things to him to cheer him up. I saw the man get out of his truck. I saw him walk down, and he said, "Oh, my God, did I do this? Is he all right?" And then they just, you know, got him and started beating him and stomping him and kicking him, and it wasn't right. I told him, don't kick him no more, don't hit him no more, don't do nothing. Get back.
A 10-year-old African-American boy jumps out onto the street in Detroit. A 56-year-old white male, well, he hits him in the pickup truck. He stops to check on the boy when a mob of African-American men, well, they jump on him. The driver is now in critical condition. Police are considering hate crime charges. Take a listen.
We are looking at all aspects. That's one issue. The issue of race is being looked at. It's not the only thing. That's not a sole focus.
So there's both sides to this, and it depends on how you believe this case played out. Was it a hate crime? The stories you fired up on our social media accounts. This is from Twitter. This is from Barb saying, I don't think race played a role. I believe they still would have done that regardless of the race of the driver. I do want to get the other side. If the races were reversed, Detroit would have to call in the National Guard because the city would be burning down. So two different opinions on this, and the judge mentioned that, look, it could just be the passion surrounding Judge Alex, a young 10-year-old boy being hit, anger ensued, and therefore the fight played out.
Absolutely, and that's why you have to look at all the evidence. They're going to look at the witnesses who were nearby, who may have overheard. If there were any statements showing that there was racial animus as they were beating the man, then that's going to weigh in favor of course, it being a hate crime, at least as to those participants who were making those statements. If not, then they may not have the evidence to charge it as a hate crime. It may not be a hate crime.
And Joey and I
but
were
as you pointed out,
this.
They should look at it. If it were the other way around, it would obviously have the same concern.
And this is tough to prove, though, Joey.
It is, because you need, and Judge Alex alluded to this, sometimes, Susan, there's the statements that show what Judge Alex referred to as racial animus. That's the intent of somebody to hit someone because of race. And I'll just get Darren's take, because he's chomping at the bit. But the point is, Darren, and what bothers me, Darren, and you can weigh in on this, people in groups may have different intents. There may be someone there who is racially motivated. There may be someone else in the group who's doing it because they're just outraged at the fact that this guy hit a poor 10-year-old boy. So what say you, Darren, as to that?
Well, I think that's a great point, that when you're talking about mob behavior, you get a couple of things going on. You get that whole momentum that a mob engenders. And as you point out, Joey, people in the mob may have different intentions. But the thing that is so outrageous to me, when you take the race out of it completely, we are a nation of laws. And the law is designed to promote behavior that we want to see people engage in. This started as an accident. There's nothing that suggested that the driver intended to hit this young boy. I'm sure that wasn't his intention. And we want him to get out and check on the welfare of that kid. This is the fundamental problem, and this outrages me.
Yeah, because of this, maybe someone in the future will not stop,
Exactly.
worried about the ramifications
And that's
of
a
what
crime,
will
Susan.
happen.
If you don't stop, it's a crime. It's leaving the scene of an accident.
And we saw it was proved an accident. The boy ran in the road. He did what was right. Now he's in a coma, and police are still looking for more suspects in the beating of Stephen Utash. Does not have insurance. He does not. His daughter set up a GoFundMe page to help pay for his medical care. It raised more than $129,000 so far.
Yes, indeed. People really concerned about him.